After a weekend of college football that did not disappoint, college football week 5 kind of disappoints a little. There's still a few matchups that I think are really entertaining and worth talking about, though. But before we get into them, I'd like to say hello and welcome to the JSA studio. I am your host, as always, Nathan, and today we are going to be previewing week 5 of college football. The first matchup that we're going to be talking about is Utah versus Oregon State. The spread for this game is Oregon State +3, meaning that Utah is favored by 3. It's the over-under for this game is 45.5, meaning that they think it's going to be a low-scoring defensive matchup. And I tend to agree. I think Utah's defense is stifling. I think their offense is efficient enough to get them enough points to win most of the games on their schedule. Oregon State, on the other hand, I think their defense is okay, but they're not playing an elite offense in Utah, so I think the matchup is still about as close to 50-50 as you can get. Offensively, Oregon State has a punishing run game that has been able to be very, very effective so far this year, along with DJ Uyunglele, who has been great as their quarterback and has dramatically improved their passing game from last year to this year. I think they do have some balance, but they're still a run-first team. The matchup that's going to decide this game, in my mind, is going to be Utah's defensive line versus Oregon State's offensive line. Oregon State's offensive line is one of the best units in the country, as is Utah's defensive line. And that's going to be the main draw for this game for people like me that like scouting and like low-scoring defensive football games. It's kind of like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. So seeing those two units go head-to-head is a very big draw for me. But how do I ultimately see this game going? Well, I think Utah is probably going to win. I think their defense is far too good, even though it is at Oregon State. I still think Utah has the advantage in this game, and I think they do just enough on offense in order for them to get the W and probably solidify themselves as a top 10 team in the country. Because even though Oregon State lost last week to Washington State in a close game, I still think they're a very good football team, although they're also very likely not to be ranked if they lose this game here as well. Ultimately, I think Utah hangs on 20-17. The next game, actually on Saturday this time, Utah versus Oregon State, is Friday night. The first game on Saturday that I'm going to talk about is USC versus Colorado. And I think this is a sneaky good matchup, not just because Vegas and I expects this game to be very high scoring, but also because I think Colorado is still a better team than people are giving them credit for, and I think USC is far, far worse than anybody is willing to admit right now. I don't think USC is a national championship contender. I'm hesitant even to put them as a contender in the Pac-12. I think there's a very real possibility they're the 4th or 5th best team in the Pac-12. Currently have them ranked 3 just because I don't trust Utah's offense to do anything. But there's a very real possibility that if Utah were to play USC, Utah would win that game pretty easily. Colorado, on the other hand, I think is a mirror image of USC. I think they have elite offenses and absolutely horrendous defenses. So I think this game is easily going to go over the 73.5 total for the game. And I think Colorado is also going to cover. I think USC's defense is schematically broken, and beyond that, I think they straight up lack coaching and talent on the defensive side of the football. So 23 points is way too big for me. I would still probably have USC favored in this game, but I just don't think 23 points is realistic at all. I think Colorado is going to bounce back after their horrible showing this past week against Oregon, and I think they are going to come out with a mentality that is going to make this a really good shot at a program building win for Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. That being said, I still think USC is ultimately going to pull off the win. I just think it's going to be a lot closer than what the experts are predicting. I do think Colorado is going to be able to score against USC. It's just that I don't think Colorado is going to be able to stop USC ever. And I think USC has potentially the ability to get a stop out of Colorado, or Colorado is more likely to make a drive ending mistake than I believe USC is. So I'm going to predict USC winning 45-38. The next game that we're going to be talking about is Michigan versus Nebraska. The spread for this game is Nebraska plus 19.5, and the over-under is 40.5. The only reason I'm really talking about this is because I'm a Michigan fan and I like talking about it. I think Nebraska is very bad. I think their offense is inept. I don't think they have a quarterback. I don't think they can run the ball. I think they are physically outmatched in this football game by Michigan and their defense. Defensively for Nebraska, I think they are also just lacking talent and cohesion at the moment. And I think Michigan's offense is pretty much going to be able to do whatever it wants. And I don't necessarily think Michigan has an elite offense. I think they're probably just good on offense and potentially elite on defense. So I don't know if that over-under is going to go over or under. I think 40.5 is like the perfect number because I think the total for this game is going to be right around there. I could see a scenario where it's like Michigan 42, Nebraska 0, or Michigan 38, Nebraska 0. But I could also see a scenario where it's like Michigan 28 and Nebraska 10. I don't know. I kind of struggled a little bit to come up with the point total for this game. Like, I'm pretty confident Michigan is going to win. I don't think it's impossible for Nebraska to pull off the upset if JJ throws 3 interceptions and looks as bad as he did versus Bowling Green, but I think that eventuality is unlikely to occur. I think Michigan is, now that they're in Big Ten play, going to lean a little bit more on the run game than the passing game, because when it comes down to it, I have serious questions about Michigan's receiving core. And if you watched my top 25 video for this past week, I did not have Michigan in the top 5. I had them ranked number 6. And a major concern and the biggest weak spot of their team is the lack of a elite caliber wide receiver. I think Roman Wilson is good. I think Cornelius Johnson is okay. And they have nothing else. So against an elite caliber defense, I'm not sure that Michigan is going to be able to throw the ball consistently without establishing the run game and the play action. So as they start to get into Big Ten play, I think we're going to see them sort of turn back into what they were these past 2 years, where they were kind of running the ball almost 2/3 of the time. All that being said, I think for this game, Michigan's going to be fine. I have Michigan winning 31-9. I do think this is an important game for Michigan this year. It's their first road game. I think Nebraska's fan base is going to show up. This is kind of a big matchup between two notable brands in college football with very passionate fan bases and, more importantly, very large fan bases. So I don't think the field is going to be empty. It will be the first hostile environment that this team has gone into. That being said, this is a very veteran team. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but I do think it is an important moment for this team to have its first road game. The next game that I'm going to talk about here is Kansas versus Texas, and this is a sneaky matchup. I think Kansas is much better than people realize they are. I think Jalen Daniels is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the country. I think he's utterly phenomenal. I think Lance Leopold is going to be the name on the coaching market next year. I'm not sure he leaves unless it's for like a big job somewhere, like maybe if Texas A&M were to open up and they just throw money at him. Nevertheless, that's a discussion for a different day. Right now, we're going to talk about Kansas versus Texas. I do think Texas's defense is really good, but I think Kansas is going to show up motivated to play this game. I don't think Kansas, because of the history and what they've done with Lance Leopold versus this team, I don't think they're going to come into this game scared or intimidated. I think they're going to come in and be like, oh yeah, we can win this game. And I think Texas potentially is looking ahead a week to Oklahoma, the Red River rivalry. So I think this might be a game, if you're looking for a shocker, like a whoa, how did that happen sort of upset, this might be the game. I think it's fairly likely that Texas is not going to be as prepared or as motivated as they ought to be in this game. And I think Kansas is going to show up. I think they're going to be ready. I think they're going to have a very good game plan. And I think they are going to want to give Lance Leopold a program-changing win. If Kansas were to beat Texas, do you have any idea what would happen? Like, all of a sudden, Kansas is 5-0 with a win over a top 5 team. They might shoot up into the top 10 or the top 15, probably. It would be absolute chaos. And on top of that, it would also mean the probability of getting an Oklahoma versus Texas rematch that nobody wants to see in the Big 12 championship game would become much slimmer. All of that being said, I think this Texas team is special. I really do. So I still think they're going to eke out a game that had no right being this close to begin with. This might be their Boston College, Florida State sort of situation where it's like, oh man, how did that team even hang around, let alone have a chance to win the game? Ultimately, I think Texas is going to win by the score of Kansas 24, Texas 28. The final game on the docket for this video is Notre Dame versus Duke. This would have been a way more fun matchup if Notre Dame had managed to beat Ohio State this past week, but that's not what happened. So really you're seeing two teams ranked in between 10 and 20 playing each other for the right to be ranked like 12 next week, which is still interesting if we're being honest here. But this isn't like a potential ground-shaking game like it could have been. If Duke still manages to win this game, it would be a big deal. Duke right now is not favored. The line is Duke plus 5.5 and the over-under is 52, which means Notre Dame is a 5.5-point favorite on the road. So if they were playing at home, they'd probably be like a 7 or 8-point favorite. I don't know. I think this matchup is closer than that. I think Notre Dame should probably still be favored, but I think it should only be by 2 or 3 points. What I saw out of them against Ohio State was an offense that, through poor play calling and just missing some throws from Sam Hartman, left a lot of meat on the bone versus Ohio State. And I saw a defense that was playing a team that couldn't particularly take advantage of some of the problems that Notre Dame has defensively. And ironically, I think Duke is better equipped to take advantage of those defensive weaknesses for Notre Dame than Ohio State was, mainly because of Riley Leonard and his ability to run the ball as a quarterback. All that being said, I still think Notre Dame is just too much athletically for Duke right now. And I do have Notre Dame winning 23-20 over the Duke Blue Devils. And unfortunately, that is all that I have for you today. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you to like if you liked the video, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if at any point you disagreed with me, or if you just have something to say, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section down below. Just remember to keep it civil. After all, what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. And I'll see you next time.